Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Kelly Green Hour as we are just a mere 3 days out from the NFL draft where the Philadelphia Eagles and Howie Roseman kicked ass, if I must say so myself. I'm your host, LJ Harrell, and as always, I am joined by my co-host, Connor Donald. Connor, we have a lot to talk about today, but how you doing, bud?
I'm doing good, man. It's been a week. It's been a week, man. Watching the draft, the chaos of the draft, and everything go down. It was a wild draft. Howie's side and the NFL in general. I mean, I was expecting it to be a little things to go a little different, and they definitely did. From a picks perspective, the trades didn't come, but it was a fun draft to watch as always. Philly started this whole thing with the outside draft and these huge crowds, and it's such a cool thing to see. Like, it really doesn't matter to me what city they're in, except Dallas. I hate that, but it doesn't matter any other city. But that was it. It was really cool to see it in Detroit and seeing this continue to be a thing for the NFL.
And it'll be in Green Bay next year. So before we get started, as always, follow us on Twitter at Kelly Green Hour. Follow Connor on Twitter at Connor10. Follow me on Twitter at LJ54. And follow Edge of Philly Sports on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook at Edge of Philly Sports. And then if you're tuning in live, let us know your thoughts, comments, your favorite pick, your most questionable pick for the Eagles, for the NFL. I think we all might have the same questionable pick at number 8 by the Atlanta Falcons. But before we dive into the draft, the Eagles made a couple of signings over the last week or so. First, AJ Brown re-signed with or signed an extension with the Eagles, 3 years, $96 million. He's the highest paid receiver right now in NFL history, and like the Eagles always do, they get out in front of it because we know Jamar Chase, we know Justin Jefferson. These guys are going to get big paydays. Devontae Smith got his. Amon-Ra St. Brown got his. Now AJ Brown got his, and he said today, in his media availability, like he wants to retire as an Eagle. His daughter starting school here. He wants his kids to grow up with his teammates' kids. So if you look at the Eagles' offense, Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, like Jordan Mailata, Landon Dickerson, they have all these guys that are signed through like 2027, 2028. And when you think about it, if you look at what AJ Brown and Devontae Smith's contract look like now, by that time, they're going to look like, with the salary cap going up every year, and with what Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, what these big time receivers are going to be getting over the next year or so. I mean, these contracts, they're going to look like steals.
Oh, 100%. I know in other group chats I talk to people, I'm like, Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase are, at the rate this is going, are $40-45 million a year receivers. And that's if they can get the contract done before any other names pop up. Like, the next name to look at is T. Higgins. Apparently the rumor came, the
I don't
rumors
think he's
there
worth
that
30.
I don't think he's worth 30 either. And the rumor was that he wanted the same contract as Michael Pittman, and Michael Pittman ended up getting, I think it was 25 million a year. 23 million a year because it was right before Devontae Smith. And now I can guarantee you T. Higgins feels he's probably worth more than that. So the market was reset, I think, with Pittman a bit. And then with Devontae Smith, that $25 million a year, that was the true reset. And it hasn't looked back since, as we've seen. So Howie's getting ahead of it, and he's really smart. I mean, like, you look at AJ Brown at the end of the contract, he's going to be like 31 years old. And there's still room to restructure with Devontae Smith. There's still room to restructure with AJ Brown. They're great contracts when you look at it on paper for the player, because they got like max guaranteed dollars based on where the wide receiver market sits now. Plus, it gave a major benefit to the team. So Howie definitely got out ahead of it at a lot of positions with Landon Dickerson, with, moving on from Hassan Reddick, the Josh Sweat situation, what's going to happen at the edge with Bryce Huff, Jordan Mailata, same thing. Like some of these guys didn't even need their extensions yet. And Howie said, I'm seeing a lot of market reset. We just saw a humongous raise in the salary cap, and this could become a norm. I'm going to get ahead of this so that I can shore things up for, at least the next 4 years. We don't really have to worry about a whole lot, except for people getting older and maybe retiring or falling off the cliff, like, the Darius Slays and Lane Johnson when it's time for retirement. We have very little to worry about compared to a lot of these other teams in the NFL.
Yeah, and You think about it, like this is what makes Howie so good at his job. Like he can see patterns. He can see what's going to happen. I mean, and when we talk about the Eagles draft, we can kind of see, or we'll talk about how he somehow read the board right. He didn't trade up for who he wanted. He was able to get two of the top 3 or 4 players at one position. So, Howie has been masterful over the last couple of years, ever since that Jalen Reagor pick. Like he's really done a good job. Now, obviously, I mean, you get Devontae Smith in the top 10. That's kind of hard to mess up. But what he was able to do this year, what he was able to do last year, he definitely deserves a lot of credit. Also, the Eagles were able to get some depth along the offensive line by signing former first-round pick of the New York Jets, Mekhi Becton, to a 1-year, $5.5 million contract. And he is primarily on the left tackle, but he's going to be the swing tackle. They're going to try him out at right guard. Like he can be that super utility offensive lineman. And if he can play the guard position, just look at the offensive line. Jordan Mailata, Landon Dickerson, Cam Jurgens, Mekhi Becton, and Lane Johnson. Like, good luck. I mean, Saquon Barkley should have a field day behind that line. Not saying that Becton can play the right guard position because he's never really done it to the extent that he could potentially do it here. But if you look at the Eagles draft, they have a lot of confidence in Jurgens. They have a lot of confidence in Steen. Now we're going to see what kind of confidence they have in Becton, and if Jeff Stoutland, the chancellor of Stoutland U, if he's able to get all he can get out of Mekhi Becton.
Yeah, and I mean, in an even better case scenario is if everything works out at right guard, Mekhi Becton plays, you show that he can play a different position than teams wanted him to play. He could end up getting you a compensatory pick next year. And we already know how he is preparing to lose some picks based on the likely outcome of the investigation that's pending from the league. But he prepared himself well through the draft by picking up 3 picks next season. Plus, we haven't even looked into the possibility of compensatory picks coming down the line. They tend to be 2 or 3 compensatory picks for the Philadelphia Eagles. So he's more than prepared to sacrifice a couple picks as well. But Mekhi Becton, I mean, I guess, it's out there that he wasn't a big fan of playing right tackle. Would a kick inside the guard help him out more? Because while he was decent at left tackle, he had his moments. We know he's had his struggle with his weight and stuff and some injuries. And while he has been decent at left tackle, he hasn't been first round worthy pick. And he didn't really do as well at right tackle for the couple of starts that he had there. But if there is anybody, like you said, who can get the most out of an offensive lineman and get them in a position that they don't realize that they can be in, it would definitely be Jeff Stoutland. And I mean, it's such a crazy competition at the right guard position. We are going to end up probably in this 3-4 man race for the starting right guard position. And the 3 who lose out probably could be starters on other teams, but they won't make it because of how deep this offensive line is. And Howie, of course, drafted 2 offensive linemen this year. One of them is a pure left guard. The other played right guard, left guard, and center. So it'll be interesting because clearly Steen has his work cut out for him. He's going to make the roster. He can be a swing right guard, right tackle, but is he going to be able to make it as a starter? I don't know, because there's a lot of players being positioned in a way that it's going to make for very, very stiff competition at right guard. So I love the Mekhi Becton sign-in. It's up to $5.5 million total. So obviously, I mean, it's probably like a veterans minimum contract with a whole lot of built-in incentives and maybe a little bit of dead money that Howie just threw in there to kick down the road. But I imagine it's a really good contract for the team, and it only presents upside for the team.
Yeah, and the one thing that people, or maybe the downfall of Becton is his injury history. Well, he won't be playing on that crappy MetLife field turf anymore. He'll be playing on actual grass, maybe one game at MetLife when you face the Giants. So that could potentially help him. But yeah, like we'll see if he could come in with the right attitude. That means he's got the right leader in Stoutland to coach him up. So that'll be fun. That'll be interesting to see. And I can't wait for camp and all these battles that you're talking about. We were talking about it coming on before we came on, that like we go into every year after every camp, we do our 53-man mock draft, and it's like, we might not get rid of this. We might not keep this person, but they can get to the 50, or they can get to the practice squad. It's gonna be tough this year. Like the Eagles have a lot of depth at positions that if they don't make this team, they should make another team. Like there's 12 cornerbacks, and I'm not saying all 12 can play. I think 12 corners. I'm not saying all 12 can play, but like last year, I think the Eagles kept 7. So the 5 that aren't going to be here, like they could potentially catch on somewhere else. So like it's going to be a fun battle to watch. I can't wait for training camp. I can't wait for rookie camp. But I mean, it's going to be so much fun just to see these preseason games play out and how, the rotation goes just to get these guys into game form. Like, Isaiah Rodgers hasn't played in over 2 years. He got reinstated, so he has the potential to come in and steal a job, or make noise on special teams. Like we were also talking about Brenton Covey. Like he was one of the better punt returners in the league. If you think about it, they might have 3 or 4 better punt returners on the roster right now. So, and then kick returns are going to be different. So, no Boston Scott, thank God. But Cooper DeJean, who we're going to talk about, Isaiah Rodgers, Aeneas Smith, who we're going to talk about, like all these guys that have this ability, that have this experience returning punts, returning kicks. I mean, that could change. And Michael Clay has to be extremely thrilled with what he has to work with this summer.
He has to be thrilled across the board. Like a lot of these guys coming in have experience playing special teams. Kenyon Mitchell, while we know what he's truly going to be for this team, he also was a very good. It was him who's a gunner. We were talking about who had the gunner experience. It's Kenyon Mitchell who was a very good gunner through college. Cooper DeJean has special team experience. Jeremiah Trotter, you can throw him out there to do some special teams work. There's just and then I mean. Oren Burks that we picked up. We forget some of the names that came before the draft, but Oren Burks is one of the names that came well before the draft. There's going to be some Johnny Wilson that we drafted. There's going to be some very interesting players that Michael Clay is going to be able to work with. And we already know he does an incredible job on special teams, but
remember we wanted to fire him after his first year?
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
Enough about that, though, because we got lots of time to talk about that. We got a draft to react to.
Yes, so the Eagles came into the draft with 8 picks, and they left with 9 plus 3 additional picks for next year. And you had mentioned the tampering thing, which maybe Howie kind of has a foresight to see what could potentially be happening down the road in terms of losing potential draft picks. We already know the Falcons, which the Falcons tampered with Kirk Cousins, gave him $100 million, and then went and drafted Michael Penix with pick number 8. We'll talk, maybe if we get a chance, we'll talk about that later. But looking at our mock drafts, we had combined one right, and that was when I took Aeneas Smith in the 7th round, in the 6th round. And the Eagles ended up getting Aeneas Smith in the 5th round. One out of however many picks.
But imagine how hard is it to do a mock draft for Howie alone, then seeing Kenyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean drop like they did.
And then he sets an NFL record in draft day trades.
Exactly. What are we supposed to? And if you told me Kenyon Mitchell was going to be there on any of my draft boards, which I did 5 mock drafts, and then I worked through them to create my final mock draft, and Kenyon Mitchell never dropped to 22 in any of those. So if you told me I had Kenyon Mitchell to pick at 22 and then a chance to trade up and get Cooper DeJean at 40, I promise you those would have been a part of my mock drafts.
Yeah, I mentioned like how he read the room, read the league, read the draft right. He didn't trade assets up to get a corner. Like now, I wanted Terrion Arnold, who went 2 picks later to Detroit, but according to Mel Kiper, Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean were his top 2 cornerbacks in this year's class, and the Eagles got both of them. So they got Mitchell at 22, DeJean at 40. Then they got a small college guy, Jalix Hunt, the edge in the 3rd round at 94. Then they went with Will Shipley, a running back out of Clemson, in the 4th round. And then their 3 5th-round picks were Aeneas Smith, Jeremiah Trotter Jr., and Trevor Keegan. And then they finished it off with Johnny Wilson and Dylan McMahon in the 6th round. Man, if you look at this, like Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, starters, potentially. Like they could – Mitchell probably going to start this year.
Should.
Bradbury probably is not going to be on the team in a month. There's that chance that he could be gone, or at least they'll let him get to camp and maybe do what, remember when we had Bradford and we wanted Wentz to start, and then Teddy Bridgewater blew out his knee. Now I'm not advocating obviously for somebody to get hurt, but a corner could go down and a team could be in need, and knowing that the Eagles have a surplus of them, call them up and maybe get Bradbury. Will Shipley, like, he catch the ball, run the ball. At Clemson, he can do a bunch of everything. Anaya Smith, again, I had the Eagles taking him in the 6th round in my mock draft. That's like, he was, again, a guy you can line up in the backfield, line up in the slot, line up on the outside, play special teams. He can get the ball in his hands and let him do what he does. His 40 wasn't fast, but if you watch his game tape, he definitely played a lot faster than his 40 time. And then obviously Jeremiah Trotter Jr. Like, everybody wanted the Eagles to take him, sentimental thing. His dad played here, and every time, like, it got to the 4th round, trade, 5th round, trade, and it's like, oh man, are they going to get him? But Howie again knew something, and he was able to get Jeremiah Trotter. Now, the thing about Trot is, like, he's obviously not his dad. His dad, like, almost like the perfect linebacker. In type is like body size. Trot Jr. is a little smaller. And it'll be interesting with the Eagles playing their 3-4 now. You would think that Devin White, Nakobe Dean, Bryce Huff, and Josh Sweat are going to be your 4, maybe. Like, so Sweat and Huff will be your outside guys, your edge rushers, with White and Dean in the middle, maybe. But Trotter, I mean, the one thing about Trotter is he works, and having a father that played in the NFL that knows the expectations of not only the NFL, of this city, that's going to be a big leg up for him. So it'll be fun to watch him out there at camp and see if he's able to make it known that, like, yeah, he should be on the field for this defense.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the only the only guaranteed starter at the linebacker position at this point in my eyes, I mean, I was going to say Nakobe Dean, because I think that the Eagles really want to give him a chance. There's no guarantee in Devin White. His contract doesn't dictate, hey, I'm your starter. It didn't tell him. It didn't say that to me. It showed me that it was, he wanted to load up the linebacker room and give some guys an opportunity and see if he can strike gold with some of these guys. And because Oren Burks had a nice run there when San Francisco ran into some injuries at linebacker. Devin White, I mean, obviously he's a former first-round pick. He came out with so much promise. Things didn't go well, and things even got further worse as time went on in Tampa Bay, down to the end of his tenure there. But I mean, at the end of the day, Devin White is a liability in coverage. Jeremiah Trotter, likely not a liability in coverage. Nakobe Dean, we don't know a whole lot about because we haven't gotten to see a whole lot from him. But it just feels like the only locked-in starter for that would be Nakobe Dean, because the Eagles probably want to give him a chance. This is going to be his last run. I think this is a year he's got to prove something, or else they have to start to look elsewhere at the linebacker position and consider moving on from him. And the good thing, like you said about Jeremiah Trotter, like, he's undersized, his athleticism isn't the greatest, but he plays with such a great competitiveness. He's got such a motor. Like, he's a guy who you don't want him breathing down your neck as competition. If I'm Nakobe Dean and Devin White, if I'm sitting there as the inside linebacker with one of the 2 starting jobs, I don't want that guy as my competition behind me, because I think he's the one who can take that job from you. And he showed a great ability to get after the quarterback and blitz at Clemson. So, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if maybe periodically Fangio throws him out on the edge and kind of plays with the other team's mind a little bit and rushes the quarterback with him, because he showed like a nose for the quarterback and getting after the quarterback when he was asked to blitz and put in those situations. So, I mean, he's a high football IQ guy. He's a good read and reactor. He's a lot of things you want in a linebacker. If the only thing we're complaining about is I wish he was 2 or 3 inches taller and 20 to 30 pounds heavier, I mean, I'm okay with this, because we haven't had even high football IQ linebackers over in recent memory. TJ Edwards is about the best one since Nigel Bradham, and it's been very inconsistent in between those guys of what you get and the guys who play beside them. That a high football IQ linebacker is something that I am all for. And I mean, I'm still not ruling out Zach Cunningham coming back either. Like, I think there's going to be a lot of change in that linebacker room, and it's going to look very different come game day. The only thing I know for certain, Nakobe Dean and Jeremiah Trotter are 100% going to be on that roster.
I still think Devin White is too.
I think he will be too. I think he will be too.
And I agree with with Zach Cunningham. I was going to mention that as well. I think that, come camp time. Now they don't have many, like the Eagles only signed 7 undrafted free agents because they don't have many roster spots. Like it's very rare. Like Howie did say after the draft in his press conference that this is the smallest undrafted free agent class that he signed. And they got to cut, like Gabe Hall has a potential to with Fletcher Cox being retired, like he can make noise, make the roster. So it's going to be fun to watch these battles. I want to talk about the cornerback position. Slay and Bradbury were the starters last year, and Avonte Maddox was in the slot. Maddox got cut, flirted with the Saints, but ended up signing back. Like, think about it. Slay might be the only one of those 3 that's back. I still think there's 11 or 12 guys that are in the cornerback room right now. They're not going to keep all of them. I think they kept 7 last year. I'm not even going to count Cooper DeJean as a corner because he's going to be like your Swiss Army knife. He can play safety, which he might start over Reed Blankenship with CJ GJ. He can play slot, backer. Like he can be all over the field. And assuming he's healthy, he said that if they had a game, yesterday, he could play. Assuming he's healthy and assuming all is good to go. You think about it: Slay, Mitchell, Cooper, Job. I think they keep because they like his special teams play. Like he's a really good gunner. Ringo, that's 5. Rodgers potentially. We'll see what kind of game after missing a year what he has. But he also could be a good special teams player. Maddox maybe. McPherson I don't think makes the team. Ricks is going to be interesting. And then they got guys down like lower down on the depth chart that probably don't have a shot. So this is going to be really interesting battle in the cornerback room.
Yeah, I agree. It's a blessing when you have arguably the top cornerback fall to you at 22. Whether it was Terry Arnold or whether it's Kenyon Mitchell, us as Eagles fans aren't going to complain about either option. And they were both there for us. And then we ended up picking Kenyon Mitchell. Kenyon Mitchell is everything Eagles fans have been begging and pleading Howie to bring in over the past couple drafts. And it's finally happened. Like you said, I think Bradbury sticks with, like, I know that some people are like, oh, maybe he'll get that post-June 1st release. I think he's going to stick around for the exact reason you said. Howie knows there's going to be a need at cornerback at some point, and maybe there's what's holding him to James Bradbury, and teams are going to know that he wants to deal him. But at the end of the day, he's going to be fine with a day 3 pick for James Bradbury. He's going to be fine with recouping another pick for the chance to open up a roster spot and get rid of someone who's likely not making the roster. There is no way I can see James Bradbury walking out there next to Darius Slay week 1 next year and having Kenyon Mitchell on the bench. There's just no way I can see it. It doesn't make any sense. And I don't think Kenyon Mitchell, you didn't draft him to be the nickelback. You have other guys who can compete for that nickelback role, like you said, Rodgers, Maddox, Zach McPherson. You have other guys who can compete for that role. And with the versatility of this defense, Cooper DeJean will probably play that role from time to time. The nickelback role, I don't think is necessarily going to be, stuck on someone who's going to play 500-600 snaps. I think it's going to be a lot of moving parts in that offense or that defense. And an opportunity for like a Cooper DeJean to get in there, maybe an extra linebacker from time to time for a rusher. You never know. That's the fun and the whole mentality around this type of defensive scheme that's coming in. There's no way. Mitchell and Slay are going to be your day 1 outside starters. There's no way it can be any way else. And Cooper DeJean definitely is going to be a safety. At this point, you have Gardner Johnson, you have Blankenship. Brown's probably going on the PUP list, so you won't see him for 4 to 6 weeks. And then after that, it's Mekhi Garner, Tristan McCullum, Andre Sam, who was signed as a UDFA. So to me, I think it's clear it's going to be Gardner Johnson. It's going to be Blankenship. It's going to be DeJean as your safeties. Maybe Mekhi Garner gets in there. Maybe Josh Jobe gets in there as like a 7th cornerback, but could have the versatility because we've talked about the move of Jobe to safety. If they're thin there, I know that before we came on the air, we talked about, but what about Justin Simmons? Is there still a chance? I agree. There's still a chance that maybe he adds a safety to the Zoom and how he's not confident with who he has as the backup safeties beyond what he knows about the 3 safeties he has in-house now. But this defensive back competition as a whole is definitely going to be very interesting. I think we see 10 to 12 kept on the roster for sure. but there's a couple that offer some very, very good versatility and some very, very good and unique capabilities on the special teams.
And I'm only bringing this up because I think I did mention his name. Boston Scott signed with the LA Rams for a year.
Oof.
So the Boston
Fun.
Scott Philadelphia Eagles era is over. Thank God. Will Shipley, so Saquon, Will Shipley, and Kenny Gainwell. Anaya Smith can probably line up back there too. So I mean, it's going to be a much different running back room, and I think a much more productive running back room. And I'm not saying DeAndre Swift wasn't good last year, but that's where we stand. Hello, Ward. Hello, world. Thanks for joining us. Mentions Mekhi Garner, who you mentioned. I think it'll be tough for him to make the team, but you never know. He could have had a great offseason, and we'll see what he does in camp and in preseason games. Ringo held out for a bit last year, so you never know if he values himself higher than the spot he was selected. Did he? He did sign later. Like he was one of the last ones to sign. But I think it's different because now, like, aren't there slotted position? Isn't the draft now like it's slotted, so they kind of know what you're making? We'll see. I mean, Ringo's going to make the team. I think Ringo's good. He has a future as well. But the one thing, it reminded me of 2002 again. If you think about it, Lito Shepherd, Sheldon Brown, and then they drafted Michael Lewis as well. And I think that's the same year they drafted Westbrook, if I'm not mistaken. But again, this is the first time he's drafted a cornerback in the first round. He gets Quinton Mitchell, and then he gets Cooper DeJean trading up. Like he saw a need, and he went and attacked it, and fixed it to what he needed to. Like obviously the defense was not good last year. The Eagles' second half of the season wasn't good last year. They ended 1-6, 1-7, whatever it was. So, they made changes. I'm going to be intrigued to see what Kellen Moore is able to do with this offense. Like, you have a lot of weapons, man. You have Jalen, you have Saquon, AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, Anaya Smith, Johnny Wilson if he makes the squad,
Dallas Goedert.
This offensive line, like, there's a lot of weapons, and it's going to be fun to see. It's going to be awesome not to see AJ Brown and Devontae Smith running like 3 routes on the one side of the field. I mean, you saw what he was able to do with with Keenan Allen last year. You saw what he was able to do with CeeDee Lamb in Dallas. Like, he's going to have these guys running all types of routes all over the field. You're not going to know where they're at. They're going to be in motion. They're going to be moving. It's going to be fun to watch, and I can't wait to see what this offense looks like.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you on that point. Like, this offense is going to be fun. It's going to be good. Hopefully, the regression we saw from Jalen Hurts is the worst that we're going to see, and he can kind of find the middle ground of the explosion season that earned him the extension, and then the post-extension season where it's hard to really blame it on Jalen Hurts because Brian Johnson wasn't doing him any favors. It didn't feel like the team all around him was doing really anybody any favors. So hopefully he can have a return with Kellen Moore. And then, of course, you mentioned all the weapons, like the decision they're going to have in the wide receiving room is going to be difficult. Like we said, Britton Covey did such an amazing job as a returner that last year. And I think he lands on his feet with another team, getting another job because of how good he was at that. But I mean, to think that Britton Covey, who did almost nothing on offense, is going to be able to beat out Paris Campbell, Devontae Parker, Johnny Wilson, who they said they're not going to move to wide receiver or not move to tight end. Like, he could be like a flex wide receiver tight end, kind of Zach Pascal type role. Like I mentioned on Twitter earlier, like he could be a guy that when you need to throw the ball to him, he's an outlet there, but he's going to be more of a blocker for you, an extra blocker, because we know they're probably going to run the football a lot as well with this type of backfield. But then you got Anaya Smith also there that you got to beat out, Austin Watkins, Joseph Nagata, who's had his chance as well. Like by the time you reach your opportunity to make the roster as a wide receiver 6 or 7, is it really going to be an ability for the Eagles to keep 6 wide receivers when last year they essentially fielded 4 almost every single week, and Britton Covey was the 5th who never saw the offensive side of the ball. So, like, is there going to be the capability to keep that many wide receivers based on how they have to manage other rooms and how we know they're going to manage defensively, where they tend to like to have the extra body or two? I don't think so, which means I don't think Britton Covey makes the cut. And I think Johnny Wilson and Anaya Smith are both going to make the cut. I think they see something in Johnny Wilson in this type of tight end, jumbo wide receiver, blocking type flex player for them. And then in Anais Smith, you get an absolute all-purpose monster. I wrote down the stats for Anais Smith. It was in 5 years, 2,400 receiving yards, 19 touchdowns, 401 rushing yards, 4 touchdowns, 369 kick return yards, 849 punt return yards, and 2 touchdowns. Like, you are there's a clear reason he got drafted where he got drafted, and somebody was eventually going to take him, and he's going to make the roster because, like you said earlier, you can use him out of the backfield. You can keep your 3 running backs. You don't need to have a 4th running back. We forced, last year having Boston Scott on the roster for kick returns. You don't have to force it this year. You can have 3 running backs, and then Anais Smith is a guy that you can hand the ball off to, do some trickery with, put the ball in his hands in creative ways that we didn't really have an offensive, first of all, an offensive play caller last year that would do it, or offensive weapons that you could get that creative with last year. So it's going to be really interesting, like you said, to see what Kellen Moore does. But Will Shipley was a good pick. He's a versatile player. He's a guy you can trust as a receiver. He's a guy who I think usurps Kenneth Gainwell. I think Kenny Gainwell's days as RB2 need to be done. We saw enough of that last year. We saw enough of them trying to force feed the ball.
Saquon's going to be on the field a lot.
Saquon's going to be out there like 90% of the time for sure. So then you got to fix it. You got to divide it up between Shipley and Gainwell. And I think I'd rather have it give the opportunity to Shipley, and Gainwell may have seen his better days pass him by now in Philadelphia with especially with Saquon Barkley in town. So it is going to be really interesting to see how the whole offense operates. And I mean, I think we should touch on these 2 offensive lineman picks because we kind of touched on it with the Mekhi Becton talk. What do you think about the right guard position? Because, I mean, now you got Tyler Steen, you got Matt Hennessy, you got Dylan McMahon, you got Mekhi Becton, you got Brett Toth, who is pretty much practice squad. You can pretty much tag him already for the practice squad because that's what he's been doing for us for the past couple years. But, I mean, what are your thoughts on the right guard position? And, I mean, the potential of, do you think, like, Tyler Steen, Mekhi Becton, if they show enough, could be, the right tackle of the future?
I think they're going to give Steen the first crack at it. And I think they showed that by the draft that they have faith in him. So I think that he'll get the first shot. But, I mean, Mekhi Becton is big. Like, so I don't know if there's ever been a guard that's his size that's played guard. So, like, that could be the big, I don't want to say issue, but the thing that could kind of keep him from playing the guard position, but he's going to get a crack at it.
6'7", 320 pounds. Like, how do you create
He's
a
more than
running
320.
lane? Yeah, I think he was listed at 331 or something. But, like, how do you create a running lane between Juergens, Becton, and Johnson on the right side of the football field?
Yeah, he's 6'7", 364.
No, 364. Okay, I underrated him greatly.
So, like, I mean, it's going to be – he just has to come in with the right mentality. And like, he's had a couple, like, in seasons that were ended due to injury. So, like that – but, again, he's not going to be playing on that crappy turf at MetLife, and that could help. You're going to be playing on grass at least 9 games. I mean, I think Brazil has grass, so that'll be fine. So that'll be interesting. But, like, just – it doesn't hurt to give it a try. And, like, if Stoutland advocated for him, I trust Stout. Trust him. Mm-hmm. So, like, let him go out there and show why he was a first round pick. Whether that's at tackle, whether that's at guard, he can be if he can play. Obviously, he can play left tackle because that's what he does. So, at least having the blind side for Jalen Hurts covered if something happened to Mailata, that's good. But if he can get comfortable on the right side, like you said, maybe he could be he's still young. Like, he's what, 27,
25 years old,
25. Like, if he can prove to be a good swing tackle, can play the right side, like, there's your replacement for Lane Johnson in 3 years, potentially. But like you said also before, if he can prove that he can play and a team wants him next year, comp pick.
The Philadelphia Eagles announced the move today on their social media. So yes, he passed it.
So they signed him to a 1-year deal. So like there's so many options that are there. And again, offensive line is such a premium position something happens and somebody wants to trade for him, there you go. You get a potential pick out of that. So it'll be fun. Like there's a bunch of things that the Howie and Eagles can still do over, going through rookie camp, going through OTAs, going through training camp, going through the preseason. Like there's a bunch of safeties that they could potentially bring in: Justin Simmons, Quandre Diggs, to name a couple. Linebackers, you mentioned Zach Cunningham. I mean, I think on the offensive side of the ball, they're probably set if you think about it. Like they have four quarterbacks on the roster. Obviously, all four aren't going to make it. Jalen's going to make it, and
Pickett's going to make
and
it.
Pickett's going to make it. So
and
it'll come down to McKee and Greer.
Yeah, he'll be your emergency 3 probably.
Yeah. Your running backs are set. The receivers, we know that the top 2 definitely are set in Brown and Smith. Your starting tight end is set. Tight end was kind of surprising that they didn't draft somebody. Now, I mean, obviously Dallas Goedert, but like this is around that time that they drafted Goedert when Ertz was here. So Goddard not playing, or Goddard, CJ Azuma, Grant Calcaterra, and Albert O. So like it'll be interesting to see how that works out, especially because Kellen Moore likes to do some double tight sets. So it'll be interesting. Again, there's a lot of battles going on. Like this roster, we may say that there's like say 35 that we know are for sure on the roster, but the last 30 or so can be a really fun battle.
Yeah, I mean, I at this point when I look at it, like they're definitely keeping at least 9 offensive linemen. I think there's a chance they might even keep a 10th offensive lineman. Like you got your starting 5. Fred Johnson kind of goes under the radar because he's essentially the backup to Jordan Mailata at left tackle. And then Trevor Keegan is probably a guy that can back up Landon Dickerson. You have the left side covered as 1 and 2 starter and backup deep. And then you got Cam Jurgens, Tyler Steen, Lane Johnson Day on the right side, and you got guys like Dylan McMahon, Matt Hennessy, Mekhi Becton, Brett Toth, Darian Kennard. Those are the types of guys that you got to make the decision on the right side of the football, and what you want to do for that side and who you want to keep. I mean, I think the whole Dallas Goedert thing, it just goes to show how much they value him in all facets of the game. Zach Ertz, I mean, I love Zach Ertz. Not talking down too much. He wasn't the world's greatest blocker. Dallas Goedert has proved he can handle himself in the blocking game, in the receiving game. He can kind of do it all. I think it speaks to how much they trust him. Do I wish that they would kind of address tight end and have something better behind them than they have? Yes. I mean, at this point, I think CJ Uzomah is probably the guy who makes it as the tight end too. I mean, I think I've seen enough out of Grant Calcaterra that he's pretty much exclusively a pass catching tight end. Albert O, I think it's pretty proven like they're going to keep him around. I think he's going to be a project guy. They may stash him on the practice squad and continue to work with him. There's a reason they acquired him and then kept him and protected him for the entirety of the remainder of last season. So it'll be interesting to see what they think they have in a project with Albert O. And then the other ones at the very end mean very little to me. And like I said earlier, I think Johnny Wilson's going to work as like a flex inside out tight end jumbo wide receiver type block. And yeah, if he can block, but if he can block and prove to be that asset, then that's the type of role I think that he's going to play. But I mean, yeah, I mean, I think on the offensive side of the ball, you're going to see that's where they're going to skim a bit. That's where they're going to be, 9, they're going to go up 5 receivers, maybe a 6th receiver if they have a guy that they can trust to do the return job. That the 3 RBs are set with, unless Lou Nichols, Tyrion Davis-Price, or Kendall Milton explodes and shows that they deserve to make that roster in some way. And, they always like to keep the extra bodies on the defensive side of the ball. So it's difficult to advocate for anybody deeper down the offensive depth chart right now. But we're going to get into a lot more of that talk later on. Lonely B says Becton is a better project as a backup swing tackle than Tyler Guyton is as a first-round starter. Guyton is 2 years younger than Becton, and Becton has been in the league for 4 years. I mean, I'm glad it was Dallas that took Tyler Guyton, if it should make us feel any better, because when the rumors were out there that Philadelphia was interested, I was not interested. And like you said, like you worded it perfectly. I mean, he's Tyler Guyton's a project, Mekhi Becton's a project. Tyler Guyton's a project that's going to protect, your you're like Becton's a project as you want to try him in other places, and he's going to probably be a backup. Tyler Guyton he's a project, and he's got to protect your quarterback because he's going to 100% likely be a tackle. But through the whole process, was heavily considered maybe you should move him into guard. So, I mean, I'm just glad Dallas took him because I know we have edges who can absolutely feast 2 times a year on a guy like Tyler Guyton.
Lane Johnson's a big fan of Tyler Guyton. He said, I think I read something that like he took him under his wing because both being from Oklahoma. So we'll see. I don't know what the heck Dallas is doing. Hopefully they're $50 million guaranteed right now to Dak. Like they got to pay Micah. Micah wants to be an Eagle, by the way, so much. Like the Eagles
that reaction to the Kenyon Mitchell pick was priceless. Like you know, this guy's like, I might even take a pay cut to become an Eagle instead of being a Dallas Cowboy. But I mean, if he wanted to come over, listen, I figure out a good way to structure. You pay that man. But I mean, I don't think Dallas can't let him.
Would never allow that.
Him, Lamb, or really arguably Prescott at this point. Those are the 3 guys you got to make happy, keep happy, and get signed. And the longer that this goes that they don't sign either 3 of them, just gets more and more and more expensive for them, which is better for the Eagles.
So the one guy I wanted to talk about that we didn't real quick, Jalix Hunt, coming from Houston Christian, a small town college. Again, Mel Kiper said he's his favorite pass rusher, but he is a project. So I mean, he's not going to have to come in and dominate right away. Like you have Bryce Huff, who you hope earns that money. You have Josh Sweat. You have Brandon Graham playing in his last year. So like, I'm kind of surprised they didn't go with another edge as well. I thought that with Dallas Turner dropping and Latu dropping, I thought that would have been an opportunity for Howie and the Eagles to trade up, but he didn't. He stuck to his board, which we all want him to do. And we knew we needed a cornerback, especially a young guy with speed there, and we got 2 of them with Mitchell and DeJean. But I think Hunt is going to be an interesting guy to watch this year. I didn't know much about him, but like watching the draft and seeing some of his film, if he can work on the moves, he has speed. If he can work on the moves, he should be an interesting guy. For the Eagles, probably not this year, but maybe 2 or 3 years down the road.
Yeah, I agree. One of the things that stood out, like they showed highlights and then I went and watched what you can find of Houston Christian film or highlights. And I mean, I think the one thing that stood out is exactly you need to develop a move set. He doesn't really have moves. He tries to use power, which he's an undersized pass rusher, so he doesn't have a whole lot. And then if he uses speed first, if it doesn't work, then he resorts to just trying to push the guy or move the guy or use power he doesn't have. So I mean, if you can get a guy like Jalix Hunt to have like a spin move or some type of bat the hand down club type move, it's like start getting like some of that going and developing some of that early on, he can definitely be a guy who can be really good even in year 2. I mean, I think he, like you said, this was your typical Howie pick, uber athletic, undersized outside edge rusher, but he has so many things that stand out. Like he's got an 80th percentile or better wingspan, arm length, burst and speed scores. Like these are the things that Howie covets and likes. If you can add those types of moves, type of move set to this arsenal, I mean, he can be a lethal guy in a 3-4 scheme as one of those outside guys, as some depth to Josh Sweat and to Bryce Huff. So, I mean, it'll be interesting to see what they end up doing with Jalix Hunt. I mean, a lot of people gave very high grades on this pick by the Eagles. So, I mean, I like the pick, is like hearing about it, looking at how the boards were falling. Is there other people maybe we might have liked to have seen there? Sure. But obviously we knew Howie at some point was going to pull the trigger on an edge, and he likes these athletic, sometimes project-like edges. And we were reaching a point where you were going to reach that type of move by Howie. And this was a move. But I mean, I like the pick, and I think there's a spot for him. There's going to be a spot for him. You look right now, it looks like it's Bryce Huff, Josh Sweat, Nolan Smith, Brandon Graham.
I forgot about Nolan Smith.
It'll be interesting to see Brandon Graham too. Like, are they going to kind of use him as a defensive edge, like behind Milton Williams from time to time? Like put him inside a bit. It'll be interesting to see how they use Brandon Graham, because how does he work in a 3-4? At his age and stuff, is he going to fit Is he still going to have what it takes to work your way in from the outside like that versus being lined up always, right on the line?
Speaking of Milton Williams, if the next guy, I think the Eagles, if they're prioritizing somebody to re-up, it's got to be him.
Absolutely. I mean, Jordan Davis, you got a couple years. You got a couple years with Jalen Carter, but I mean, you definitely got to get Milton Williams, because I mean, this could be one of those years where he becomes a focal point as a 3-4 instead of in a 4-3. And if he starts making plays and starts earning his buck, well, we're going to have to pony up, because we see defensive linemen, especially inside defensive linemen, starting to get a lot of money. While he hasn't necessarily proven himself to the level of the payment that some of them are getting, eventually he could get to that level. So I think he's definitely somebody you have to start to consider on that side of it. So, I mean, overall, I guess let's get to the grade aspect of it.
Well, hold on. Before we get to the grades, I did quickly want to run through the first round of the draft from last week. So the Bears took Caleb Williams, which was the worst kept secret. Jaden Daniels to the Commanders. Drake May to the Patriots. Marvin Harrison Jr. to the Cardinals. Joe Alt to the Chargers. Malik Neighbors to the Giants. J.C. Latham to the Titans. Michael Penix to the Falcons. Rome Odunze to the Bears. J.J. McCarthy to the Vikings in what was the first trade, and we thought there were going to be a bunch of trades up into the top 5, but there were none. Olu Fashuno to the Jets. Bo Nix to the Broncos at 12. 6 of the first 12 picks were quarterbacks. Brock Bowers went 13 to the Raiders. Talisi Fuaga went 14 to the Saints. The first defensive player came off the board at number 15, Latu Latu to the Colts. Byron Murphy II to Seattle. Dallas Turner to the Vikings at 17. At 18, Amarius Mims to the Bengals. Jared Verse went to the Rams at 19. Troy Fautanu went to the Steelers at 20. Chop Robinson went to the Dolphins at 21. Kenyon Mitchell to the Eagles at 22. Brian Thomas Jr. to the Jags at 23. Terrion Arnold to the Lions at 24. Jordan Morgan, the offensive tackle from Arizona, went to Green Bay at 25. Graham Barton, the Duke Garter center, went to the Bucks at 26. Darius Robinson went to went to the Cardinals at 27. Xavier Worthy, I don't know how the Bills traded with the Chiefs to allow them to get a receiver when one of the Bills' biggest needs is a receiver. Went 28 to the Chiefs. Tyler Guyton, 29 to Dallas. Nate Wiggins, if anybody ever screamed Raven, might be Nate Wiggins in this draft, went to the Ravens at 30. Ricky Pearsall, receiver from Florida, went to the Niners at 31, and Xavier Leggett went 32 to the Carolina Panthers. That was the first round. What was your biggest, as soon as it happened, I'm going to take Michael Penix Jr. out, but when it happened, you were like, huh? That happened? What was the biggest, oh my God moment for you in the first round?
My biggest oh my God moment was the 6 quarterbacks in the first 12 picks, and the first time ever happened in history. This is
and then there wasn't a quarterback pick for another 130 some odd picks.
Oh yeah, you knew it was top heavy in that way, but some of these guys had second and third round grades for some people. There's a lot of reach, and we know in any given year you have 2 or 3 QBs who actually hit. You never have a full class. You never have even the whole first round of quarterbacks. You never have them hit. You have those perennial backups. So at this rate, you look at these 6 guys who were picked, there's a good chance the max that are going to hit is 50%. 3 of these guys are going to hit. 3 of these guys are probably going to become perennial backups or move around the league looking for a starting job, and other teams giving them an opportunity based on what they saw in college or what come the draft. So that was the aha moment to me, and wow, I cannot believe this happened. Beyond my second pick was going to be the Worthy one, because that was crazy in my mind too, that you're going to allow the Chiefs to get him when your need is equally as urgent, definitely more urgent than the Chiefs need at wide receiver. But to think that only maximum 3 of these quarterbacks is likely going to hit, 3 of these teams spent so much, Drake May better hit. If that Vikings offer is true, that they were willing to offer 11, 23, and a 2025 first and a swap of mid-round picks, that is massive capital that they turned down to say Drake May is our future, especially for a team that I think is a lot more than a quarterback away. Like, I feel like the trade back made so much sense in that moment for the Patriots. So it'll be interesting to see who hits and who doesn't. And the Michael Penix moment was obviously the WTF of the entire draft. So it's good you took that off the board. But obviously that's like the 1A, 1B with the first six of 12 picks was quarterbacks.
Yeah, Bo Nix going number 12, I thought was
that was a reach too. That felt the only thing that stands out there for me is Sean Payton. He likes a guy. I mean, people like to throw Drew Brees
and then
around
they
and
traded
look what he
for
did
Zach
with Drew
Wilson.
Brees. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, Peyton's got a vision, and it was not dangerous. So,
Lonely B says 6 QBs in the first assured the Eagles would get a quality pick. That's very true. All those quarterbacks going. The first defensive player not going to 15. And then, like you mentioned, Xavier Worthy, like the Bills making a trade with the Chiefs, the team you can't beat, and one of the positions in need, you let them go and get a receiver. Like, whatever. It didn't make sense. All right. Grade time. What's your final grade for the Eagles in the 2024 NFL draft?
I give it an A-. I thought it was a really good draft. Like, Kenyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean were definitely like A+ A picks. It's Jalix Hunt where it's not like, to me, like, I mean, like, okay, you're going based off of looking at other people's boards and everyone's thoughts of, oh, this is a good value pick and stuff. But to me, I'm still not 100% sold on Jalix Hunt's. Wide receiver 3, I think we could have addressed it in a better way, so I didn't love it. Linebacker, I think we could have addressed in a better way, but obviously Cooper DeJean, I'm going to take that over addressing the linebacker position when, especially hindsight being 2020, you got Jeremiah Trotter Jr. I mean, I like the draft. I thought it was a really good draft. This one last year, the past couple have been extremely good for the Eagles, extremely good for Howie. So A- for me.
I'm going to go B+. Again, I want it. They got the two of the top 3-4 corners. I don't necessarily have a ranking of the cornerbacks. I want a Terrion Arnold over Quinyon Mitchell. I mean, that's going to be something that I'm going to watch going forward to see which one's better. Getting Cooper DeJean in the second, I mean, a lot of people had him going in the top 20. So I guess, that's good for the for the Eagles and for Howie being able to get Will. I think Will Shipley is going to, like you mentioned, he's going to be a better RB2 than Kenny Gainwell is. Jeremiah Trotter Jr., like, for the nostalgia, like, I still have my Trot jersey, and if he wears number 54, like, it's not going to say Trotter Jr., but it's going to say Trotter, so I'll be able to break that out. But yeah, so like I'm gonna go solid B+. Obviously, it's impossible. It'll be impossible for us to grade this draft for another 3 years. But they have a handful of potential starters and difference makers and guys that could come in and make an impact right away. So I'm gonna go B+.
I mean, we got to give the immediate reaction grade, and then come draft time 2-3 years down the road, we can look back at this class and be like, oh, it was definitely a solid, change our grade or hold our grade. But at this point, based on what we saw, based on how the board fell, and based on how we operated and getting the draft capital next year, fair grades.
Yeah. All right. Thank you all for tuning in to our draft recap episode here on the Kelly Green Hour. Thanks for those that tuned in live and left some comments. Lonely B says, don't forget to factor in the Kaylee Ringo pick in your grade. He played last year, so I don't see how we would put that in there, because he did play. He had if he didn't play last year, I would understand that, but he did play. So I don't know. I don't think we would put it in there, but we'll see. I think he's going to make the team. He's talented, a young guy. He played good on special teams, so it'll be fun to see. I think rookie training camp is usually a week or two after the draft, so that should probably be coming up over the next couple of weeks. The schedule release should be coming out sometime in May, so we're definitely going to have a bunch more shows coming up, and we can't wait to get back at it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we'll see what we can make out of, this quieter couple of weeks, but we may not be back until, after rookie camp, where we get to react a little bit. John Ross got the invite. We got some tryouts going on in an already crowded room. So rookie camp's just fun to see and kind of like, I mean, I know it's not the be all end all, but it's kind of cool to see the guys in their midnight green going out there, giving it a shot for the Eagles. And it'll be good to see like Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, and some of these guys. If Cooper DeJean's 100%, is he going to attend? Is he going to participate in stuff? So it'll be interesting.
He hasn't played football in a long time. He's gonna be there.
I think he'll be there, exactly. So it'd be good to get some. It'd be good to get some reaction to that when it comes, but that may be our next show.
The Eagles used a 2024 pick to draft Kelee Ringo.
No, it was a 2023 undrafted pick.
No, that was Rick's. Ringo got drafted.
Oh, Ringo. Yeah, Ringo got drafted. Yeah.
He got drafted in like the 3rd round in 2023, right? 3rd or 4th round?
Yeah. Yeah, so Ringo was not in this draft, unfortunately.
Yeah. All right. Thank you all for tuning into the Kelly Green Hour. As always, follow us on Twitter at Kelly Green Hour. Follow Connor on Twitter at Connor10. Follow me on Twitter at LGHerrell54. And follow Edge of Philly Sports on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. Thank you all for tuning in to our draft recap episode here on the Kelly Green Hour.